So today we have with us Linta. He is our SPM, Strategic Program Manager of the Global Palm Procurement Team. And today we have Linta here to share about himself, his Unilever journey, and how he started his own NGO. So over to you, Linta.
Okay, thank you, Huiting. I just want to check, is everyone able to hear me? You think you can hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you well.
Okay, cool. Okay, I'll start then. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here today and see few faces. I mean, I don't see faces actually joining. You can actually turn on your camera so that I can see your face. I know it's lunchtime, so feel free to grab your lunch and eat while I'm talking. So my name is Lintar. I'm currently a strategic program manager for global palm oil procurement in Unilever. Today I'm going to share my story about purpose and a little bit about the NGO later on that I run in Indonesia. So to start with, I do have few questions, actually only two simple questions. So this will help me to drive the live talk a little bit better. If you have your phone with you, you can simply scan the QR code. If not, you can go to your browser, go to menti.com and enter the code that is shown there. Okay, so you should see the first question. So you can go to menti.com and use this code. So first question is very simple. Do you know me? Can you please give your answer? Okay, are you able to see the question in menti.com?
Yes, Linta. I have it at the slide of waiting presenter to show. So I don't know if you need to refresh this response.
Let me see. I have to refresh. Oh yeah, I can actually see it here. So 13. Okay, nope, it's okay. Okay, good. So you'll find out about me a little bit later. Second question, have you seen Unilever's new People and Planet commitment? Okay, some of you say yes. Very good, you are ready to join Unilever. For those of you that don't know, I'll share a little bit about it later on also in my slides, or yeah, you can go to Unilever website to find out about it. Okay, I'll move on to my next slide. So have anyone seen this chart or know about Ikigai before? I mean, it's okay if you don't know, but I will share basically a bit of my story, my career in Unilever, and my personal journey, and how I and my colleague start the NGO in Indonesia, which is called Carbon Ethics. So when talking about purpose, this chart will help actually to give you an idea on what is purpose. So this chart is basically saying that if you do what you're good at, and if you do what you love, you do what the world needs, and you are getting paid for that, it basically you have lived your own purpose. It might not exactly true, but broadly makes sense. So I actually always love this chart basically to start the talk about purpose itself. So people can obviously have different purpose in life. So from a very simple one, like making your parents proud, or getting married, have a few kids, maybe not a lot because it's expensive. I have that experience, and live a happy life. And also there is a people who have a complicated complicated purpose, like what my current boss have. So his purpose is basically to leave a positive and sustainable legacy behind everything that he was done. So sounds very complicated, but yeah, he is really doing it role by role now, because I know him for quite some times now. I know what he's been doing. So he's basically has been a very great example for me. So mine is not the complicated one, unfortunately, so might not be very inspiring, but yeah, I'll share through this talk how I think I've lived my purpose. So this is about me. I'm Indonesian, living in Singapore now for more than 4 years already. I was born in 1990, so you can do your own math. Not that old yet. Hopefully, I'm still born in the same decade as most of you. But if not, yeah, it's okay. I love. I'm married, and I have one daughter. I love doing silly stuff with her. So she's doing a pose actually in this picture. So it's very difficult to get a good picture with her. But yeah, we're having fun every day. So yeah, she born here in Singapore. She's 4 years old now, and actually about to be back now home from school. So she will soon destroy my workplace. I have an industrial engineering as a background. I start my career in Danone, actually not in Unilever, less than 2 years, but then I moved to Unilever Indonesia. So now I have been in Unilever for more than 6 years. I'm a data and digital enthusiast. I cannot do coding, but that doesn't stop you really to like or to build your own digital product, because now there are many platforms that empower you to build your own website or even an app. It is actually called a no-code development platform, NCDP. So really no boundaries now for you to be a digital expert if you don't have IT background. So in Unilever, we also trying to democratize many digital tools that allows people to do their own digital stuff. My current interest is currently Agile framework. This is very relevant with current situation, working from home. If you don't know about this, please find out. It will be very useful for you. Carbon calculator, which is related to the NGO works that I'm doing in Indonesia. And some other two stuff that I'm currently reading and watching is about self-driving technology and vertical farming. I mean, these two is really about the future. So yeah, I just have to be prepared for myself, and it's very exciting topics actually. So now about my journey. So I have spent close to a decade actually in Unilever. So 1/3, yeah, it's about 1/3 of my life. So it's a very significant one. It's not about loyalty really, but because I did going through so many different stuff in Unilever, so I don't feel bored. Yeah, Unilever basically keep me excited on what I'm doing. So you can see two boxes here. So one is the first 5 years of my journey after joining Unilever. And the second box is the past 1.5 years. So the first box is basically a very long time. In fact, I get a trophy and expensive pen as a token of appreciation because of I've been there for 5 years. So I've been a procurement guy since the start of my career. I do have a supply chain management background, so I'm quite good at it. But most of the procurement stuff, specifically, actually, I learned it on the job. It's a very impactful role where, as a group, you do manage 60% of Unilever turnover, which is about 30 billion euro. It's huge. So what you did in this role is really making an impact to Unilever's bottom line directly, and also a profit, and also the sales to all of you here as our direct consumer. So I started doing local role in Danone, and then I moved to Unilever in October 2013, doing regional chemical buying for Southeast Asia and Australia. And then I moved to Singapore in March 2016 for a new global role, buying surfactants. I'm basically responsible to supply all of the surfactants to 8 clusters globally, where we have hair, skin cleansing, deo, and oral factory. That's about 2/3 of Unilever's business in home and personal care. So at the end of 2017, my role got bigger. There is a new addition. Basically, I also manage and buying the feedstocks of the surfactants that is used in all of the hair and skin cleansing product, which is a palm oil derivatives. It is called fatty alcohol. So really, I'm quite focused in my global role. I move every 2 years, doing so many negotiation, partnership, trying to understand the value chain so I can negotiate better. doing so many supplier visits also at that time, really covering all of the aspects of procurement. But within those 5 years, right, while I'm doing all that, it's actually more than 5 years because including the first 2 years of my journey in Danone, I do have a feeling about other team who at that time I thought very feasible because they are like sitting in a role like a sustainability or marketing. So basically when whatever they are doing, it seems like very impactful. So I'm a little bit of jealous also at that time while doing my role. So in 2016, because of my interest also in digital, and at the time it was also quite booming in Jakarta. So I tried to build my own digital startup, so that I feel okay, I'm also doing some other stuff other than my Unilever job. It was doing quite well. We do have traction and people are using our product. It was even got featured by App Store to be 1 out of 10 app alongside other well-known application made in Indonesia. After moving to Singapore, I did have interaction with Unilever Foundry, which is the startup collaboration arms of Unilever. They basically noticed me, a Unilever employee, I think through some Google search, I don't know, that I'm building this app in Indonesia. And long story short, I was one of the Foundry 30, which is their annual selected startup program. And because of that, they give me an offer for collaboration with Rinso and Molto in Indonesia, which is the detergent and fabric conditioner brand, where they will be basically the sole provider of detergent and softeners to all of my laundry partner at that time. But yeah, at the end of the 3rd year, as a team, because I also have a team based in Jakarta at that time, realized the difficulties basically to scale. At that time, the big players also started to launch a similar service and eating out our shares as well. So yeah, with heavy heart, I decided to basically close down the operation. But as a solution, basically, I sold the technology and I also offer the employment of my employee at that time to one of laundry service player in Jakarta who already have many branches all over Indonesia. And closing my first years, I saw an opportunity about One Young World. I don't know how many of you knows about One Young World here, but yeah, it's a global event. So Unilever has been partnering with One Young World, sending around 30 delegations every year to their summit. Their summit location were different every year. In 2018, the location was in The Hague, Netherlands. So I try my luck. I submit my application. I talk about what I'm doing in procurement for the past 5 years. I also talk about my own digital startup and how it basically giving an impact to a small shops laundry partner in Jakarta. And fortunately, yeah, I got selected out of hundreds submission. So because of that, I feel that yeah, it really proves that Unilever as a company, they are not only considering people who do their job, like people based in people doing sustainability or marketing to join this kind of event, but also they also consider employee who is doing more outside their normal job, so they appreciate you. And even through this submission, when I look at other people's submission, yeah, I also see that basically many Unilever's employee out there doing so many stuff outside their normal job. So it was very inspiring actually. So as long as you make an impact, Unilever really value basically what you are doing. So a quick snippet of my One Young World journey. It was really a life-changing and eye-opening experience. Not only I'm able to meet many Unilever colleagues globally, who is also creating an impact within and outside their job, but also thousands others similar people from all over the globe. We met and even have a close face-to-face discussion with the world's leader, like what you see in the picture in the middle top. It's basically the Prime Minister of Netherlands, and then middle bottom, it's a global CEO of DSM Nutrition, which is one of a very big company, global company, and also other global activists. I also met Paul Polman, which is our CEO at that time, and Linda Nair, our Chief Human Resource Officer. So from the event, you hear what really matters, basically. What are all the global issues currently happening in the world, and how an individual can contribute to solve it, because there are many people there sharing their stories about what they are doing and how they basically trying to solve that problem. So coming out of this summit, right, I was really determined to do more, basically outside my day-to-day job. So I'm basically coming back to Singapore, and then I straight go to my boss, and then I asked to basically move role. At that time, I was only in my first year for my new feedstocks role. So it's actually very unlikely for me to move, because usually in Unilever people move every 2 or 3 years. But I still like, you know, a bit pushing my boss, saying, yeah, but I want to do this. This is like something that I really want to do, blah blah blah. So I told him that can I do something related to sustainability, still in procurement. And I don't know, it's out of luck. In January 2019, my boss basically saying that, yes, there is this opportunity as a strategic program manager for PALM sustainability and digital agenda. It is still within procurement. So I moved to that role in January 2019, 3 months after I joined One Young Worlds. Again, just 1 year after my new role. So very unlikely, but it happens. So it again really proves, you know, in Unilever, if you are determined enough, and yeah, you know that you are able to basically explain to your boss on why you are wanting that kind of roles, it will happen. So in this role, my main job is basically to ensure the palm oil that we buy is coming from a sustainable source, and we are able to track it to the most upstream of the value chain, which is the farmers. And we also need to make sure that what Unilever, that as a Unilever, we have a direct contribution to the farmers' livelihood. So palm oil is obviously one of the most controversial crops, not only in Unilever, but also in the world. It is one of the biggest contributor of deforestation, and that's why it was a very challenging role. In the same period, Unilever announced new CEO, Alan Job, and Alan introduced a new sustainability compass or direction for us, in which all of Unilever brands have to own up the sustainability and have to have their own purpose. So as strategic program manager for PALM, I do have quite a big exposure and interaction with our Chief Procurement Officer, Dave Ingram, because yeah, it's a very important crops. So we do have a weekly meetings set up between us, our team, my boss, and Dave, to discuss about all of the steps in palm oil. And so he knows me, and one time he invites me to be part of the team building the new procurement with purpose strategy, which is aligned with the new compass. So I was the only manager in the team, even though I know they also need a notes taker. So yeah, I'm also doing that role, but yeah, it's still fun because it's again a big experience for me to come up with a new strategy for procurement, and it's a multi-year program, so not like a 1 or even 3-year strategy. It's really a long-term strategy. So basically, it's not about buying better, but also about how to buy responsibly with 3 focus: carbon, plastics, and people. And this is actually the first time I interact with things like carbon and climate issues, and how to do it and grow together with our suppliers. So yeah, many things going on. After my first One Young World, I changed role. I do this procurement with purpose strategy. It was very exciting one. And I know there is another opportunity for me to join One Young World for the second time as a returning ambassador. So there are only 3 people at the time got selected for this role from past delegates, basically to support the new delegates getting the best out of their One Young World experience. Again, I tried my luck. I shared my stories after I got back from my first One Young World. I mentioned that I pushed my boss, I changed my role. I doing this procurement with purpose strategy and stuff. And yeah, somehow I again got selected. So again, very lucky and fortunate. So I fly to London last year with few delegates also from Singapore at that time. So 3 of us flying to London, October 2019. So yeah, how I really miss traveling basically before COVID. Every year, I think I can go I can go out. I can go overseas. So here, yeah, I'm quite an experience. I know what to expect. I did a lot of networking with others, and from procurement with purpose works, I also learned about a lot about carbon and impact to the climate. And last year was also the rise. I don't know if you know Greta Thunberg. So obviously the climate crisis was really the main highlight of the event last year. And so this is where I'm thinking how I can contribute more. So I met a few of my colleagues there from Indonesia. We discussed, we talked, and long story short, we create our non-profit organization in Indonesia, Carbonetics. So this is about the NGO. It's a registered non-profit organization in Indonesia. Yeah, this is basically 4 of us. One is from BP, one is from Johnson & Johnson, and the other one is also from Unilever like me, but Unilever Indonesia. So 4 of us met there in One Young World. It's basically an our goal is to decelerate climate crisis through carbon footprint reduction and offset through blue carbon ecosystem conservation, while improving the livelihood of communities. So this is our slogan: reduce what you can and offset what you cannot. And one of our main product there, other than carbon calculator, so you can go to carbonetics.org and calculate your own carbon footprint. We also offer an carbon offsetting product, which is this blue carbon package. Basically, by buying this package, we will plant the 2 mangrove trees, 4 seedlings of seagrass, and 1 seedling of estuarine seagrass in Indonesia. My role here is on technology and people. So I do manage all of the technology part, like the carbon calculator, websites is basically the things that I'm doing, and I also manage the people there. We currently have about 4 full-timers who basically help us to run day-to-day job, because 4 of us are still doing our main job currently. Now we have about more than 50 volunteers helping us basically to run this organization. So very exciting one. And why ocean and blue carbon? Because this is also when we do a research in Unilever, for example, our focus has always been a terrestrial forest. So when I'm managing palm oil and we talk about deforestation, it's always talking about a terrestrial forest. But then we do some research and we found out that blue carbon is actually stored more carbons, like up to 10 times more than terrestrial forest. So we think that it is a significant one. And then we know that in Indonesia, mangroves and seagrass is actually hold the largest blue carbon stocks globally. Since we are running it in Indonesia, then we think that why not then we focus on this blue carbon, because it very much makes sense and it gives you more impact also on that compared to terrestrial forest. This is some of our impact highlights so far until June of 2020. We have planted with the support of so many peoples. We have planted 500 plus baby corals, 12,000 plus mangroves, 2,300 plus seagrass seedlings, 4,000 plus seaweed, and we have sequestered CO2 close to 760,000 kilograms. Our target for this year is actually 1 million kilograms, but we are on track to sequester about 1.5 million kilograms of CO2. And as I mentioned, we have 50 plus volunteers. We have 3,000 plus supporters, and individuals who is already educated through our platform. We have also partnering with more than 10 institutional partners like Love, Beauty, and Planet, for example. Last time they launched the new variant, and they basically plan corals with us, and then like Nudie Jeans as well as Nike. So there are 54 households that we are working with in Thousand Islands, Rembang and Riau Islands. We are basically working closely with them to plant all of those mangroves. And on financial outlook, really big portion of it, 65% is directly going to farmers. Four of us really do not get anything. We do need to pay our full-timers to run the business, but then the rest of it, and then we do use some part of it to run the technology. The rest of it is really going to farmers directly. And we have 1 out of 3 social return of investment. We got featured basically by One Young World in their annual report last year. Yeah, so that's basically a little bit story about my NGO, Carbonetics. And yeah, it's not end there. I'm again somehow got noticed because of the work that I did in Carbonetics with my team, and got invited for the kickoff of our new People and Planet Ambition to be one of the panelists alongside other external climate activists. So it was a very, it's a new commitment from Unilever and a very exciting one. I even shared it in my LinkedIn because I do work closely specifically on a deforestation-free agenda by 2023. I got like almost 1,000 likes, very random. I think something is wrong with the LinkedIn algorithm. But yeah, that's basically what I share. And then yeah, I mentioned I get noticed. Somehow I also get invited for the kickoff of this new commitment. I be one of the 4 panelists there. I talk in the same platform with Alan Job, which is our CEO. There is also Mark Engel, which is our Chief Supply Chain Officer. Rebecca Marmot, our Chief Sustainability Officer. We talk about what is our new commitment, and 4 of us are basically representing the young climate activists, trying to ask our questions about what do we feel about Unilever making this kind of commitment and stuff. So last year we made a commitment on plastic. This year, I think in June 2020, we committed on 3 or 4 new stuff. So the first one is deforestation-free supply chain by 2023, which is something that I'm very much involved in my new role in palm oil. But yeah, what is exciting and also aligned with the work of Carbonetics is our commitment to be net zero emissions from all of our products by 2039, and also invest 1 billion euro in the new Climate and Nature Fund. This is again a very huge commitment to be met by the company at the size of Unilever. I think we are like one of the first, in our size to make this kind of commitment publicly. So I am personally very proud, extremely proud, to be honest, and very excited also at the same time with this new commitment, because I know there are still a lot of issues, even internally within Unilever, where I can, be involved and try to solve that from the inside. And I also do think that other Unilever employees should also be, very excited basically about this commitment, because then they know that whatever they are doing will going into that one goals of people and planet. So yeah, a very exciting one. And so back to my first slide. If I ask myself, did I live a life of purpose? I think I can luckily say yes. I mean, nothing really big actually from my purpose. My purpose is, really just to be useful for others while doing what I like to do. I don't have a fancy sentence for that. Maybe I'll try to create one. But yeah, I always believe that what I'm doing is always matters. I can always contribute no matter how small it is. And yeah, if you keep doing it, I believe people will appreciate basically what you are doing. And with new Unilever's commitment, I hope it should be the same with all of Unilever employees also. Because, you know, basically by working for Unilever, making that and Unilever making that commitment, you know that what you are good at and what you are paid for, and also what the world needs. The first three circles is already, you know, being answered by working with Unilever. So it really just the matters of finding, making an effort to find what you love and what your passion is, to really, you know, arrive at your own personal purpose. Okay, I did quite a lot of talk, 30 minutes. I think this is the first time I talk something very long to myself. Hopefully no.
Thank you so much for sharing,
it's a time for Q&A. Yeah, I give it back to Hui Ting now.
Yes, thank you, Linta, for sharing your exciting journey. So we will now start up for Q&A. You know, please do just either type your question in the chat, or you can raise your hand and I can call on you to ask it live to Linta. You know, it's really great that he's here with us. So we have a question from Ko Wei Yang. Hi, Wei Yang.
Hello. Yeah, thanks for the sharing. I do have a question for you, specifically in terms of like procurement. So because like what you mentioned, like a lot of the work is done on the job training. But what advice do you think you can give to like students who may not have exposure in like procurement roles that they can explore upon like before like applying for like full-time jobs or internship roles?
Yeah, I mean, as a fresh graduates, right? I did learn about procurement in my university, but for you but to be honest, it's not very much aligned with at the end what I found in Unilever. So yeah, I can say I joined Unilever doing procurement with really no background at all. But what I think can be useful as a fresh graduate, right? As long as you have and if you want to go into this kind of role, supply chains role, it can be procurement, planning, or anything. If you have a passion on data and analytics, I think it's already a good starting point for you to join the roles. I mean, if that's really a foundation or basics. If you have that, the other stuff you can really learn on the job.
Noted. Thank you for the question.
Okay, I think we have Jonathan who would like to ask a question as well. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Hui Ting. Hi, Intar. Actually, just curious, how did you manage to work a full-time job and also do the carbonethics.org webpage? How did you keep your balance in doing both of those jobs?
Yeah. So I always trying to always be aware of my working hours in Unilever, to be honest. So I might not be like others. I always count, okay, I don't want to work more than 8 or 9 hours a day. so I always try to be conscious of that working hours. So sometimes in my lunchtime, I can have a call doing some carbon ethics stuff. I do have a few volunteers working with me based in Jakarta. So we have some catch up in the lunchtime. And then we also have some catch up again in the evening. If not a catch up, if there is something that I need to do specifically on technology, I will also do it on the night time. Usually after my daughter go to bed, then I'll start doing that job. Not long, because yeah, I also have to be conscious with my health. And most of the works, I can say I do it in Saturday, unfortunately. So the first from the early morning until lunchtime, I can say like a full-time job there for Carbonetics. After that, it's basically family times. And in Carbonetics, we have this agreement saying, because we do have a lot of volunteers, and those volunteers are actually also still doing their full-time job, or some of them also still studying. So we have a regulation saying that, okay, Sunday is really no work day, so please be considerate with others. So Sunday really nothing to do. So that's how I basically trying to juggle and manage it.
I see. Okay. Thank you for sharing, Lintar.
Sure.
Okay, Linta, we have a question in the chat from Si Qian. So basically, she's interested to know what are some of the criteria used to assess if a certain product is sustainable. For example, palm oil, which you have shared just now. Yep.
Yeah, very difficult questions. So in the past, right, even this is for Unilever, I'm trying to be honest, but I'm always honest, hopefully. We thought that having a certification of some, third parties organization is enough. Like, it's already justified. Okay, if you get, for example, for palm oil, there is this certification called RSPO, Roundtable of Sustainable Palm Oil. If you have that kind of certification, it's enough. You already buy palm oil sustainably. But then we found out that it is not, unfortunately. So Unilever is actually the largest certificate buyers. We don't buy the certificate. The largest sustainable palm oil buyers physically in the world. So, and we are actually also the largest users of palm oil from FMCG. So we know that. So at the first, we think that, okay, this kind of certificate can help us. So that's why we only buy from a company who sell the product and audited by RSPO and have this kind of certification. But then the deforestation is basically still keep happening. So we know that we found out basically last year that it is not enough basically just buying for a material with RSPO certification. That's why now the work that we are doing and aligned with our commitment, we want to buy from a deforestation-free supply chain by 2023. So the work that we are doing is really is very fundamental basically. So in the past, for example, I mentioned I used to buy a surfactant. So surfactants is the the end product of raw materials that we use in our formulation for shampoo, for example. But to arrive at these surfactants, you need so many process before that. And at the end, it links you to palm oil. So palm oil is really the feedstocks for you to produce surfactants. There are like 5-6 layers in between. So in the past, we used to just buy the surfactants. Now we try to buy all up until the palm oil itself. Why we are trying to do that? Because if we manage to buy the palm oil, we can basically try to make sure, and we know that the palm oil itself is coming from a land that has not been deforested before. So that's basically our strategy, and it's also the same case for other crops, because our focus is with, I think, 4 crops. Palm oil, soybean oil in Brazil, it's making a huge deforestation there. Again, we really want to go into the source, like, can we meet the farmers? Can we buy directly from the farmers? If it is not scalable, can we buy from someone still with an agreement that a signed agreement saying that they will look after the farmers and they will look after the forest. So stuff like that. So that's how basically we are making sure that the materials that we buy is really a sustainable one. So we try to move out from simply just a certification, but to a fundamental buyings of the most upstream product in the value chain.
Okay, great. Thank you, Linta. We have Nathaniel who has raised hand. Nathaniel, do you want to ask a question?
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and especially for Lintar. Yeah, it was a great sharing. So I want to ask, in your procurement role, right? We all know that from business point of view, like the main goal has always been like creating profit for the company. But now we can see the trend that all companies, like almost all companies, are driving towards sustainability. Uh, can I ask your opinion, like how significant is the impact of having a sustainable supply chain as compared to a profitable supply chain? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a conscious choice also that Unilever make, because they know you are their customers. I mean, all of you young people, you know about all of these issues, sustainability issue, climate crisis issue. They know you are going to be their main consumer. That's why they are doing it. So I'm working for Unilever, but I'm also trying to be, a climate activist. That's why I was invited in that panelist before. And these kind of questions I also keep asking my boss, really, like, how can we do better? How can we improve what we are doing? But yeah, I do think it is impactful, for a company like Unilever to start this commitment, basically because of the scale, right? I mean, now so many small brands trying to launch, saying that, hey, if you want to buy sustainable product, you can buy from us. But it really a small brands. But it's good, but maybe it will take time for you to really make a change, a big change in the world. So for Unilever, with our size, 52 billion euro turnover, one of the biggest fast-moving consumer goods company, to make this kind of commitment and changes, it will be really impactful. And our hope also is actually, once we make this kind of commitment, our competitors will also, try to move to our side and joining our commitment as well. So for example, I mean, okay, I don't want to say bad, but yeah, I think because I'm a Unilever commitment, so it somehow come to my head to say something about others, but I don't want to say it. But yeah, that's basically what we are trying to do, to influence others also to start the journey together with us.
Okay, thank you, Lintar.
Thank you, Nathaniel.
So Linda, there is another question from Laila in the chat group. Laila would like to ask, what is your experience in getting investors and partners for your NGO? So she's curious about the general consumer, sorry, the chat just got refreshed. Yeah, basically she's curious about the general consumer attitudes towards sustainability in Indonesia, and what is the level of acceptance for your NGO in the market?
Thank you for the question. So we don't have any investors now. So in the very beginning, we do try to start small. We fund it from our own pocket. But now, I think by June 20, literally by June, we managed to get some income from people who wants to offset their carbon footprint, and using that income, other than doing planting, we also try to basically use it to pay our full-time employee to run the day-to-day job. So we do look out for an investor to basically support us in doing our role, because yeah, we have a target, right? In end of next year's, we want to be fully globally certified, so that we can start selling carbon product as well in the market, because it's not really a common things to do currently in Indonesia specifically. So we think that if we are able to sell this kind of carbon paper globally, we can use that money again to help all of the farmers in Indonesia to fund planting more trees as well in Indonesia. And how basically Indonesia people react to it. I mean, yeah, it's not really a common things to do. Not many people knows about carbon impact, climate crisis actually in Indonesia. I mean, they are aware about deforestation, but not really about carbon. That's why we actually create this also to educate them about their carbon impact and the climate crisis. Even my mom or my family doesn't know about this. So now I'm also trying to, educate them about this as well. So I do really, I mean, I'm not only talking, but I always I start doing it from my own family. as well.
Okay, Linda, there is a thank you note from Sichuan on your previous answer into the insights into the palm oil industry. So she added on saying that it seems like it's a lot of groundwork required to pursue a sustainable palm oil supply chain, and would like to add on a question. So after Unilever purchased the feedstock, is the production managed by Unilever or is it outsourced?
Very good question. You can join our team now, so I think you understand what we are doing. But yeah, so we do have a contract with the very most upstream suppliers, but we don't own the production in between. So again, in between, we do have what we call as a toller. So we just pay them to process the product, right? We tell them, but then we tell them, hey, you buy the feedstock from this guy, because we know with this guy they are working with a good farmers who doesn't do deforestation and who pay their employee well. So that's basically what we do. So we direct them, buy from here, do the process. Once you are done, send it again to next suppliers, do the process before finally send it to our factory for our production. That's really what we do. So we cut all the chain. At the same time, we are actually saving costs as well, because we cut all of the unnecessary margin or gray area of margins as well by doing that. So that's what we do, basically. We do have a contract in all chain. In between, we don't have the factories to do it, but we ask someone to process it for us with some agreement, taking it from the upstream suppliers. A very good question.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Just checking if there is any more question. Okay, there is another one from Laila. Again, she says, thank you for your insights. And can you also share what keeps you motivated? And do you have any other future plans, like starting a new company?
No, I started that, if you remember, digital startup, right? Somehow I learned myself, I don't think I'm good at doing that kind of stuff. Seriously. I did it alone actually at that time, but then I invited few friends to join with me, and we hired also a few employees at that time. But yeah, it's not really work. Yeah, I don't think I'm basically good at that thing. Maybe now, I don't know, later on. But now I love about my sustainability role. I love about my sustainability work as well outside of Unilever. So that's what I'm enjoy to do now. In the future, I don't know. Oh, I do have a dream. I want to help presidents of Republic of Indonesia in the future. Let's see how can I go there.
Wow. Any other questions?
So feel free to look for my profile on LinkedIn and chat me on LinkedIn. If you have any other question, don't worry. I'll try to answer it there. If you have any specific questions about Unilever or procurement, sorry, specifically, you can also ask me there if you don't want to ask it now.
Yeah, so Linda, maybe you want to move on to your next slide.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so this is the last part of my presentation, basically. So if again you can take your phone, scan the QR code, because yeah, I run this NGO in Indonesia, but I also wants to see basically what is your climate action commitments. I mean, by now maybe you don't know, but maybe you can do more research later on. Basically, all of these 6 stuff that you see, if you do this, it will really help the planet really, and it can really reduce your carbon footprint as an individual. So yeah, I just want to see what are you like happy to commit to. If I can share mine, yeah, I did the Save Electricity one. It's quite an easy one actually to do. I also use public transportation. I cannot afford to have car here. But yeah, even if I go back to Jakarta, I start using the public transport as well, or ride sharing. Reduce meat consumption, to be honest, is something that I still having a difficulties to do. So I admit that that is super difficult, and I can see no one is picking that one. Oh, there is one. Good. Be careful with what you are committed to. My wife said that maybe if it is Wagyu, it's okay because they take care of the cow very well, so it's okay. It doesn't make her hard. I don't know what is the logic behind that. Anyway. Okay, cool. Yeah, the first two is obviously the easy one. Reduce, reuse, and recycle is also something we can easily do, especially in Singapore. We do have quite a good system here. And if you go to Indonesia or Jakarta, it's a mess. So yeah, someone needs to do that. To do that, maybe I need to go back. I don't know. Let's see, and help or start doing it. But yeah, here in Singapore, I think it's something we can obviously do. Okay, cool. Thanks a lot, everyone, to give your commitments. Please try to do it as much as possible.
Great. So Linda, before we close, can I ask for some tips, final tips on why procurement is an exciting place to join?
60% of Unilever's turnover. Why it is not exciting? 30 billion euro. Okay, anyway, but yeah, you do have a great impact really. Like when I joined, right, Unilever, I already managed like 150 million euros of spend. That's a huge spend. And behind that spend, you have so many suppliers that you can influence. Like we have this program, Responsible Sourcing Policy, RSP. It's basically making sure that all of your suppliers is really treating their employees right. So again, it's something that you as a buyers can really drive the programs on. So it's really exciting really. Other than that, whatever we also do this, as usual, savings and stuff. It's a normal stuff as a buyers, but when you do that, you know that it directly impacting Unilever's bottom line, and it can improve Unilever margin. And when we have a better margin, we have more money to do more good, basically, for the planet. Like what we are committing, investing 1 billion euro of money for climate and nature fund. It's not a small money. How we get that money is through what procurement is doing, basically. So yeah, a lot of things you can do as a procurement. I also just realized it when I joined, but maybe I say it because now I'm a procurement.
Okay, great. Thank you, Linda. Thank you everyone for joining us today. If there are no final questions, then we will thank Linda and everyone else for your time. There is there is a link in the chat for you to actually get, basically there is a link, a survey link to redeem your B&J vouchers. So you can actually click on that to fill out the survey. And our next activity will be an exciting team challenge presentation from our 3 finalists at 2 to 3 p.m. So if you can, please do join us as well. Yep, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.